properties, and it's obviously healing properties. It keeps you forever young, and that's what they use on planet Earth to keep themselves forever young and not age and free of disease and so forth. But critically, this is the most critical part, it also has cladding or cloaking properties where the energy fields of the monoatomic gold actually can shield events or thoughts or attacks from other beings. And this is relatively new information. And it actually comes from a long time ago already, from David Hudson's research in this, where in the trials that he was doing, experiments with the MIT guys, where at about 700 degrees Celsius, the white powder, the little pile of white powder started to disappear and just vanish from sight. And by the time it reached 800 degrees Celsius, it was gone. So therein lies a very interesting and important aspect of the monoatomic gold. So I believe they shielded their planet. And this is where Zachariah Sitchin misinterpreted, didn't give us false information, but misinterpreted what he read, because he didn't necessarily understand the monoatomic gold very clearly. Maybe he did, but he says where they crushed the gold into the finest powder and suspended it in the heavens to protect their planet from cosmic activity and cosmic rays and blah, 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 right? I believe what that actually meant is that yes, indeed, they crushed the gold into the finest powder, which was not a powder form that we think, which is actually a transmutated form of the gold and not crushed into nanoparticles, for example, and then suspended that monoatomic gold around their planet to clad their planet so that their activities on planet Earth would not be detected by beings of higher consciousness. And it is that monoatomic gold that actually created that first energetic grid around planet Earth. It is also possible, however, that they could have used nanoparticles of gold, because there's been some really interesting developments with using gold as nanoparticles mixed with synthetic DNA. And what happens when you mix nanoparticles with DNA, it creates this incredible lattice, like this nano sheath of material, of DNA. So you've just created a cybergenetic organism by using nano gold and DNA, and the DNA is indestructible. Every time you break it, in that form, every time you break it or there's a tear in it, the DNA and the gold nanoparticles automatically fix the breach or the break. That's an interesting discovery, and this has been a great article that you can go back and look at in, I think, Science or Nature. It was published about 6 years ago about these experiments.
Yeah, with the suspended gold, it reminded me of chemtrails with the aluminum that they pump into the atmosphere.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, we've got some experience with that's happening around us right now, but I think the Anunnaki were dealing with it at a much higher level and a much higher understanding of the full spectrum of activities in the universe, which is way beyond most people's comprehension at this stage.
A lot of people believe that Fort Knox is empty, and, of course, a couple of years ago, they ripped off Libya for all their gold. Is the New World Order, or the Illuminati, as people put it sometimes, are they working for the Anunnaki?
In my mind, there's no doubt that that's what it is. I think it's all the split between Enlil, Enki, and then Marduk, who remained on Earth and took over Egypt. He basically took over Egypt from the ancient Anunnaki activity there, and then turned it into what we see as the modern Egypt, which is sold to the tourists when you go to Egypt. You know, I call it the Disneyland of deception. That's what Egypt is. And that's where Marduk stepped in and started taking control of this planet some, 3000 BC, maybe before that. But it actually goes back before that even, and I believe that the real shenanigans and control of humanity probably started shortly after the flood. I guess some 12,000 years ago, or whenever that may have been. That's still open for debate, I suppose. After the flood, when they had to restart some of the mining activity, But at that point, they started mining in much wider parts of the world, not just South Africa, but in the Americas and all over Asia as well, and so forth. And you start seeing activities of other ancient civilizations suddenly explode overnight. And all of them are rich in gold, extremely rich in gold. All these ancient cultures are all rich in gold. And whenever you ask them, when the conquistadors ask the ancient populations, where does all your gold come from? They say it belongs to the gods. The gold belongs to the gods. So your question, why is Fort Knox empty? Because the gods have been taking the gold of this planet for thousands of years. And there's no reason why they should stop. Just because we don't know about it doesn't mean it's not going on. Just because we don't know, just because they don't show rockets being launched and satellites being launched into space, doesn't mean it's not happening. Satellites are being put into space all the time, but it's not on the news, and yet there's a new satellite up there every second bloody week.
I don't know if you can help the audience member with this question, but for our last question from an audience member today, are there spaceships hiding behind the moon?
Oh, there's no doubt about that. The moon has been a strategically positioned satellite around planet Earth from which the control mechanisms and the control tools have been launched to control planet Earth in many respects. Frequencies that are broadcasting from the moon that are bombarding planet Earth, mind control frequencies, frequencies that control the weather patterns, frequencies that control earthquakes, and it's incredible. The moon is a very important part in this whole control mechanism of planet Earth, no doubt about it.
Tell us about the Ubuntu Global Community Village and what it is you do there.
Yeah, well, you see that this is interesting because I wouldn't have thought about Ubuntu unless I've been studying the ancient civilizations and where we come from, because I realized at some stage that the Anunnaki didn't use money. It's only when we start dealing with humans, suddenly money appears. So I realized that money was introduced as a tool of enslavement to control humanity. And here we are. That was introduced through the royal bloodlines when the Anunnaki appointed the first priest kings from amongst the humans to control the humans and give them fierce weapons and so forth. So I realized that since money is a tool of control, the only way we're going to overcome it and get out of this enslavement, absolute enslavement, is to stop using money. You cannot be controlled if you don't use their tools of enslavement. So the whole philosophy of Ubuntu is to create communities, make people realize that money is a tool of control, so let's stop using that tool of control and start living and creating things as living, breathing human beings, not legal fictions or persons or citizens, but living, breathing human beings that are divinely created, part of a much bigger plan that we could possibly imagine, which is unraveling very quickly as you start looking into this interesting thing, that we actually have the potential encoded in our DNA to be gods and creators or co-creators of our own reality and our own universe. And so the whole Ubuntu movement is to move people of the using money and start taking control of our own future and our own reality and creating communities, united communities where people live in unity instead of conflict, where people live in harmony and cooperation and cooperate towards the greatest benefit for everyone, as opposed to conflict and competition, which we're told is very good for us, which is the absolute biggest, one of the big lies. So Ubuntu communities are united communities where people live without money, where everybody contributes their God-given talents or acquired skills for the greatest benefit of everyone in their community. People control themselves. They set up what you would call, I guess, a tribal council that decides on a daily basis what's best for the community, as voted and decided by the people. And you realize how quickly you create a community of abundance that we can't even begin to imagine, because money is no longer a hurdle to any kind of progress. If we want to build a rocket to go to Mars, we'll build a rocket to go to Mars. If we need a new bridge, we build the bridge. We don't have to go to bankers to ask them for money to build the bridge, because money does nothing. Money doesn't make the world go round. People make the world go round. People grow the food, plant the seeds, solve the mathematical equations, build the bridges and the free energy devices. Money does nothing. It's created as a tool of a hurdle towards progress and a tool of obstruction to create scarcity on planet Earth and keep people enslaved. So it's a very simple proposal, but it takes a while for some people to wrap their heads around it. Some people get it immediately. And that is the most exciting thing that I can tell you, is that once you start thinking about it, it becomes like a little splinter in your mind, as Orpheus says, that will not leave you alone, because you either struggle with it and you keep struggling with it, but you know that there's something in it, or you resolve the situation or the problem and you join the Ubuntu movement and realize how simple this transition can be.
Michael, tell the audience about your various websites and the best place for them to purchase your latest book, African Temples of the Anunnaki, The Lost Technologies of the Gold Mines of Enki.
Yeah, look, my main website is michaeltellinger.com. That's where you'll find out about my research into ancient civilizations. But unfortunately, that now crosses over with the Ubuntu and what I call contributionism philosophy. So please go on there and subscribe to my articles and my newsletters. And then the Ubuntu Liberation Movement website, which is now also a political party in South Africa, and we will be contesting the election in South Africa next year. For those that are curious about that, and it's very interesting because I did my first 1-hour interview yesterday morning on one of the largest national mainstream radio stations in South Africa. It was very interesting. I must tell you that the response was overwhelmingly positive. Not one negative caller out of about 20 callers. It blew me away.
So you could become the next president of South Africa? What's going on here?
Yeah, I'm running for president next year. I know it sounds silly, but it's true.
No, it's incredible. Good for you.
Yeah. So the Ubuntu Party website is there are actually two websites. There's ubuntuparty.org.za, and then we've created a platform for people to communicate and share, and that's called ubuntuplanet.org. Ubuntu Planet. But join the Ubuntu Party. Join the Ubuntu movement. It's not just for South Africans. We have members in 168 countries as I speak to you right now.
And the best place to purchase your latest book?
I guess go to Amazon. Go to Amazon. But just also to tell you, this is really important, my new book that deals with this whole Ubuntu contributionism thing, that explains it in great detail, very simply explains the origins of money, how we've been conned into the slavery. That book is called Ubuntu Contributionism, A Blueprint for Human Prosperity. And that book is in layout as we speak. It should be available as an ebook within the next week or 10 days. So please keep watching my website and the Ubuntu website. We'll be posting the links for the ebook downloads there within the next 10 days, I guess. And it's about 370 pages, but it reads like a novel. Wow.
What a brilliant guest. Thank you so much for being on the program today, Michael.
It's a great pleasure, Russell, and it's great talking to you, and I trust we can do it again.